Hey there. Glad you're here. Tonight we're not diving into epic battles or dramatic betrayals. There won't be any crumbling empires, no shouting kings, no wild revolutions. Instead, we're going somewhere quieter. Imagine history not as a loud parade of swords and speeches, but as a gentle hum, steady, unassuming. A kind of soft rhythm made not by heroes, but by the tiny, forgettable things they left behind. The things we touch every day without thinking twice. Buttons, spoons, bricks, paper clips. They don't demand attention. They don't sparkle. But these so-called boring inventions, they quietly rewrote the rules of human life. Because what if the most powerful tools weren't grand machines or glowing screens, but small, silent objects that just made life work? Now, before we settle in, just a small note. If you enjoy these slow, sleepy journeys through the soft side of history, feel free to like the video, but only if you genuinely want to. No pressure at all. And in the spirit of cozy connection, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. The comments always feel like a little starlit map of listeners around the world, each of us drifting through the past together. So if you're listening in bed, go ahead, tuck in. Let the weight of your blanket wrap you like the embrace of a well-buttoned coat. Maybe turn on a fan or light a soft candle. We're in no rush. Take a deep breath. We're about to drift gently into the soothing world of history's most boring inventions. That changed everything. Let's start with something tiny. A button. Right now, you might even be wearing a few, fastened neatly along a shirt, maybe hidden on your pillowcase, quietly holding everything together. But once upon a time, people didn't have buttons. And getting dressed? That was more chaos than coordination. Back in the day, think ancient Rome or early medieval times, clothing was all about draping and tying. You wrapped fabric around yourself like a burrito, secured it with belts, knots, or pins. Safety pins, by the way, hadn't been invented either. If your outfit came undone mid-walk, well, that was just part of life. Then, around the 13th century, something clicked, literally. Buttons, not just as ornaments, but paired with functional buttonholes. And that changed everything. Because suddenly, clothes could fit snugly. You didn't just wear your tunic. You could tailor it to your shape. The button made garments more efficient, more flattering, more personal. It was a tiny innovation with enormous impact. Think about it. Once buttons caught on, fashion evolved. Sleeves became tighter, bodices more fitted. Clothes didn't have to be tied anymore. They could be designed. And that meant more than just better outfits. It meant social class could now be seen on your chest, literally. The wealthier you were, the more buttons you had. Decorative ones made of silver or bone, all lined up like a glittering resume. Even tailoring professions blossomed. New jobs emerged because suddenly people cared about how their clothes fit. The button turned function into form. But beyond fashion, buttons offered something comforting. They closed up your coat on a cold day, held your sleeves in place when you worked. They were a kind of daily reassurance. Click, click. You're good to go. So while they may seem boring now, those little circles lining your jacket, they were once a quiet revolution, a bit of control in a chaotic world. And tonight, as you drift off, maybe take a moment to appreciate the little fasteners keeping everything stitched together. Soft, small, and stronger than they look. Next, Let's talk about the spoon. Not the sword, not the wheel, just a spoon. You've likely used one today without thinking. Stirred some tea, scooped up soup, maybe fished out that last stubborn bite of dessert from a bowl too deep. But this little curve of metal or wood is one of humanity's oldest and most enduring tools. Let's go back. Way back. Before spoons, people used what they had. Shells, shards of pottery, maybe a piece of bark. Eating wasn't elegant. You mostly used your hands, which worked well enough for bread and meat, but not so much for porridge, stew, or broth. The kind of meals that warmed the belly on cold nights. That's where the spoon came in. Some of the earliest spoons show up in ancient Egypt, beautifully carved, often ceremonial, sometimes inlaid with ivory or precious stones. These weren't just tools, they were symbols of status. To own a spoon meant you mattered. Later, in ancient Greece and Rome, spoons began showing up in more practical settings. Made from bronze or silver, their simple shape, a small bowl and a handle, offered a revolution in refinement. You could now eat gracefully. You didn't have to slurp or slosh or risk dipping your knuckles in your soup. It was hygiene. It was dignity. It was soup management. As the centuries unfolded, the spoon became universal. Wooden ones for peasants, ornate ones for nobles. But the purpose stayed the same. Comfort, nourishment, and that gentle scooping motion that feels so human. Think about it. A spoon is the first utensil we hand to a baby. It's also often the last one we use in old age. It feeds us when we're too fragile for forks or knives. It's the quiet caregiver of the cutlery drawer. In wars, soldiers carried spoons tucked into their boots. In monasteries, monks carved them by candlelight. In every era, in every culture, the spoon whispered the same promise. Here, eat, be warmed. Not flashy, not loud, just curved and kind. So next time you stir your tea or taste your soup, remember, the spoon has been by our side for thousands of years. It's not just a utensil, it's a tiny, silent companion. Now let's turn our gaze to the ground beneath us, specifically to the brick. Not glamorous, not graceful, just a lump of shaped earth. But oh, what a difference it's made. Close your eyes and picture ancient Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers. It's hot, dry, and the soil. Clay. Everywhere. Someone thousands of years ago scooped up that clay, shaped it, and let the sun bake it solid. And with that, the first bricks were born. Simple rectangles. But with them, people began to build up. Before bricks, homes were temporary. Tents, huts, wattle, and daub. But bricks meant permanence. You could stack them, shape them, plan a city, a temple, a wall. Civilization, as it turns out, doesn't begin with a king or a sword. It begins with someone stacking sun-dried mud into a corner and saying, "This will stay." The ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the granaries of Egypt, the paved roads of Rome, none of them possible without bricks. They're what let us shift from wandering to staying put, from shelters to cities, from fire pits to fireplaces. And yet, they're so boring, aren't they? A brick doesn't sparkle. It doesn't move or buzz. But its strength is in its quiet repetition, laid one by one, patiently, by tired hands in dusty air. In medieval towns, bricks helped control fires. In colonial cities, they framed the future. In your own home, they might be hidden beneath the paint and plaster, but they're there, holding everything up. The brick is stubborn, steady, a monument to effort over time. And there's something comforting in that, in knowing that the walls around you, solid, unmoving, are made of millions of little things that once were soft earth, each one small, each one quiet, each one shaped by human hands and left to harden in the light. Tonight, as you rest, imagine them, layer upon layer, rising silently into the sky, a soft fortress against the wind. Now, let's open a drawer, not a magical one, not a hidden chest of treasure, just a plain desk drawer. Maybe it sticks a little when you pull it. Maybe it's cluttered, full of pens, receipts, a few paper clips scattered like metal commas. Pause there. That paper clip, small, silver, and absolutely silent, has done more for modern life than most kings or conquerors. Before the paper clip, keeping papers organized was a minor nightmare. You'd tie them with ribbon, pin them with brass fasteners, press them between boards and weights. It worked, sort of, but it wasn't simple. Then, in the late 19th century, a Norwegian inventor named Johan Valler came along with a humble twist of wire. No patents on fanfare, no statues in his honor. Just a loop within a loop, an elegant clasp that said, "I've got you." And from then on, life got tidier. The paperclip didn't just hold paper, it held thoughts together, contracts, ideas, love letters, poems written at 3 a.m. It fastened memories, mistakes, masterpieces, all with a soft bend of steel. And it didn't stop there. During World War II, Norwegians wore paper clips on their lapels as a symbol of resistance against Nazi occupation, a sign of unity, quiet defiance, no slogans, no speeches, just a paper clip, because it holds things together. Even now, in the digital age, we still use them. They still work. No updates required. There's something deeply human about that. The paperclip isn't flashy. It doesn't break records. But it reminds us that strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it curls softly around what matters and simply holds on. So tonight, if you pass by your desk or rummage through a drawer and you spot one of these little loops of calm, pause for a moment. That's the quiet heartbeat of organization, right there in your hand. Let's wander now into quieter territory still, not the echo of a grand hall or the clang of invention, but a gentle scratch on paper, a soft, familiar whisper. The pencil. We take it for granted. It sits at the bottom of drawers, rolls under furniture, gets chewed on during phone calls. But the pencil has written more of human history than any printing press ever could. Its story begins not with graphite, but with soot and charcoal, used by ancient artists and record keepers who needed a way to leave a mark. Over time, that soot evolved into something steadier, a strange, silky substance found in England during the 1500s, pure graphite. Locals called it plumbago, believing it to be a form of lead. It wasn't, but the name stuck. And so we call them lead pencils, even though there's never been any lead inside. Clever hands shaped the graphite into sticks, wrapped them in string or wood, and suddenly, ideas could travel farther. The pencil was portable, affordable, and best of all, it made mistakes erasable. A humble little instrument that gave us permission to try, to revise, to write without fear. Engineers drafted blueprints with it. Poets scribbled first lines. Revolutionaries mapped futures. Children, still to this day, trace their first letters with it. Even astronauts chose pencils in space, because pens sometimes fail when gravity does not play along. The pencil is resilient, unfussy. You sharpen it, and it starts over. Again and again. It doesn't need charging, doesn't freeze, doesn't care how expensive your desk is. And that eraser on top? A tiny reminder that imperfection isn't the end. It's part of the process. So tonight, as you drift off, imagine all the words a single pencil might hold. A lifetime of stories, equations, doodles in the margins, love notes passed in class. It's not a loud invention, but it's a quiet invitation to begin. And now, for a bit of closure, quite literally, because while buttons had their day, the 20th century gave us two new ways to fasten our lives: the zipper and its softer cousin, Velcro. Let's begin with the zipper. Imagine rows of tiny metal teeth, closing with a quick pull, and a sound so distinctive it practically became a verb: zip. That's not just convenience. That's poetry in hardware. The idea took shape in the late 1800s, but it wasn't until the 1930s that zippers started showing up in fashion, and not everyone trusted them. There was something suspiciously quick about it all. No buttons to count, no ties to fuss over, just a tug, and done. But slowly, they zipped their way into daily life. First on boots, then jackets, dresses, jeans. They made clothing easier, more secure, less fiddly, and they added a certain sleekness. That quiet confidence of one smooth motion locking everything into place. Then along came Velcro. It started in nature, with burrs. A Swiss engineer named Georges de Mestral noticed how they clung to his dog's fur and thought, what if we mimicked this? The result was fabric that clung and released like magic. Tiny hooks and loops dancing together in silence. Well, almost silence. Velcro was a revelation. Shoes that didn't need tying. Jackets that sealed quickly. Even spacesuits adopted it. Because in zero gravity, fumbling with laces isn't just annoying. It's dangerous. Velcro was child-friendly, elder-friendly, everything in between friendly. It whispered, no rush, I've got you. And so these humble fasteners, zipper and Velcro, entered our lives. Not loudly, but with soft assurance. They held things closed, kept things tidy, and offered just a little more ease. Sometimes history's greatest comforts are the ones that help us close the day. So here we are. We've wandered through the history of things no one talks about at dinner parties. Buttons, spoons, bricks, paper clips, pencils, zippers, Velcro. The quiet crowd. No battle cries, no royal decrees. Just soft clinks, quiet clicks, and the rustle of graphite on paper. These inventions didn't shout their way into history. They crept in, subtle, useful, unassuming. But that's what makes them beautiful. They didn't ask for monuments. They became part of our daily lives, without asking for applause. They served, held, fastened, fed, shaped, supported, again and again. And tonight, as you rest, surrounded by things you maybe never noticed before, maybe that's the lesson. That greatness doesn't always arrive on a throne or with fireworks. Sometimes it's folded into your coat, tucked behind your ear, clipped quietly to a bundle of notes. Sometimes history changes not with a bang, but with a soft click. So wherever you are, in bed, on a couch, drifting through twilight, thank you for coming on this slow journey, for giving your attention to the things most people overlook. If you enjoyed this, feel free to like the video or subscribe, but only if it felt right to you. And if you haven't already, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I always love seeing the quiet corners of the world this reaches. Now let your eyes rest, let the day fade, and may your dreams be stitched together by the little things, the quiet ones. Good night.